Mishcon Academy digital sessions.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a great privilege and pleasure for me on behalf of Mishcon to introduce Dr. Tristram Hunt, who has had an extraordinary career, which we're going to discuss in some detail, focusing in particular on his role as director of the Victoria and Albert Museum, one of the great museums of the world. For those of us who don't really know about the history of the place, maybe you could just give a little, I mean, you're a historian, you can give us a little account of its genesis.
So, I mean, the V&A emerges in the mid-19th century from three main strands. The first is the design school movement of the 1830s and 40s, this very strong idea that Britain was falling behind France, Germany, America in design skills, and so wanted to have a school of design. So you would collect artifacts to encourage design and drawing and, in a sense, manufacturing skills, and have a museum as part of that. The second strand was the East India Company. So we have our origins partly in the East India Company repository, which was the museum, the repository of the British East India Company. And the psychology of colonialism was strongly connected to collecting. And this museum was originally in Leadenhall Street in the city, and then it becomes the India Museum, and then it forms part of the South Kensington Museum. So that's why we've always had this incredible South Asian collection and strong connection to British imperial history. And the third and final is probably the most significant, which is the Great Exhibition of 1851. And that incredible moment in Hyde Park, which brings together the work of industry of all nations. And in its aftermath, Albert was with his great kind of factotum Henry Cole. So we can't let this moment go to miss. We've got to have a kind of legacy for this. And so he created Albertopolis, south of Hyde Park, which would be, you know, as we know it today, the Natural History Museum, Imperial College, the Science Museum. And at the heart of it was the South Kensington Museum. This was to be a treasury of science and art to encourage design, manufacturing, technology. So quite a strong kind of almost utilitarian focus for the museum from its early days, along with this very strong conviction in education. And this in a sense marks us out, I think, from other museums, and it's a big part of what we hope to do today.
And how did it get its name?
So originally it was just the South Kensington Museum. Then Queen Victoria was convinced at the very end of the 19th century to rename it the Victoria and Albert Museum. She just wanted it to be the Albert Museum in honour of her beloved Albert. But she was rightly convinced that it should be the Victoria and Albert Museum. And again, we like the fact we're not a state, we're not a governmental foundation like, you know, the British Museum or the National Gallery. It gives us just a slightly different feel, in a sense, to us as an organisation.
How does that kind of semi-detached relation to the state work in funding terms?
I mean, we're both very lucky, and at the moment, in this COVID moment, rather stuck. I mean, I think the British model of museums is extraordinarily good in that we receive now around 45% of our funding from government. So we receive around £40 million a year from taxpayers in the UK. And it means that there is obviously a strong connection as a government-funded body, but also an independence. And that's different to our colleagues on the continent, but we're also not wholly dependent on philanthropy and you know, entry prices as colleagues in America are. And this model was working really well until, you know, COVID hit, and suddenly we're slightly high and dry because we've neither got the kind of big financial muscle of the American endowments for the museums, nor do we have the kind of level of state support that our continental colleagues have. That said, the government has been generous to the museums in recent bailout, and we're grateful for that. But the funding model, I think, will probably have to change over the coming years, because all of our commercial income, catering, retail, licensing, events, corporate support, and let me put on the record my debts to Mishcon Academy for their support and the support of other members, all of that's under pressure.
I mean, just to help us understand, if you imagine a kind of pie chart, what are the proportions?
We're a £90 million organisation. If you kind of slice through in terms of revenue rather than some of our kind of capital programs, the levels of support, it's paid for tickets for exhibitions, it's membership, both corporate and individual, it's retail, both online and in the shop, it's catering, and then it's kind of commercial and events hire. You know, we've had to, like every business and like every organisation, just kind of put our horns in, put on pause various projects. And I think one of the challenges we're all facing is living with unknowability. You know, we did an amazing 4 million visitors coming to South Kensington last year. I don't think we'll be back to that for 3 or 4 years. And without those visitor numbers, everything else is impacted. So we're going to be a smaller organisation. You know, we're going to have to do less. Whilst also, I think what we've all felt during COVID is the importance of civic places, the importance of being present together, the importance of, you know, whilst we're all on the screen at the moment, of looking at things which are not on the screen has value. So I think the role of museums, and actually from my perspective with that, our place within supporting education outside the classroom, all of it's vital. What we do remains vital. But, you know, people are in a kind of business critical frame at the moment, and you know, understandably, they're not able to support in the way they did. So the ask to government, because we are a national collection, will be higher, and we will need more support over the coming years.
It's troubling, I'm sure, for you to find yourself in that position, because government is going to be saying, well, we run out of money ourselves, we're going to have to raise taxes, and, you know, why the V&A in London? What's your answer to that?
As a national museum, you know, we work with schools in Blackpool, in Doncaster, in Sunderland, and Sheffield. We lend, we're the largest lender of objects to other museums around the country. One of our sites is obviously in Stoke-on-Trent at the Wedgwood Museum, the Wedgwood collection there. So we're a national institution, yes, in South Kensington, but national. But also, if we want visitors to come back to the UK, you know, coming to see our cultural institutions is one of the big drivers for for inward bound tourism. And that's something we're going to have to rebuild over the coming years. And then the other component from a kind of, you know, return on investment idea is the creative industries contribute, you know, over £100 billion to the UK economy. And the V&A has always regarded itself as this kind of seed bank for the creative industries. I think, you know, before lockdown, the latest figures were showing that 40% of visitors to the V&A would describe themselves as from the creative industries. But, you know, we completely get that in the hierarchy of need, us versus a critical care bed, or us versus some of the, you know, law and order, you know, we understand our place, but I think, you know, you get a very good return on investment in supporting cultural institutions. Yes.
What is the V&A's kind of national footprint?
So we have touring exhibitions in Chester and Exeter, and obviously the schools program. In terms of UK visitors, so 50% of our visitors from abroad, 50% from the UK, 45% of the UK visitors will be from London. Another kind of 20% from the southeast, and then the rest from the UK. So it is kind of, in terms of, as it were, coming direct to South Kent, London and southeast dominated. But the important point about the collection is that we share it as widely as possible amongst other institutions. But also, having been the Member of Parliament for Stoke-on-Trent Central, I'm absolutely passionate about ensuring that what we do through the Wedgwood Museum in Staffordshire connects across the Midlands. And so over the coming years, you know, our footprint in Derby and Nottingham and Leicester and Stoke, you know, has to be, you know, much, much bigger.
So, I mean, you talked about your political career, which allows me to just take a slight kind of sideways look at that. You started as an academic, and then you had a period as a very fully and actively engaged member of parliament, and you were in the shadow cabinet for a while, and now you're the director of this extraordinary museum. Of course, it raises lots of really interesting questions. Like, I mean, just the sense that, one's life, however structured one wants to make it seem to the outside, it's so much a matter of chance and opportunity. I mean, I just wonder whether you feel that or whether you had some master plan.
No, I mean, I think that's very, very well put. I mean, I was passionate about politics and passionate about history, whether it's kind of, making radio programs about history, or whether it's, the role of the museum, or, my work as an academic historian. There was always this idea of that interplay between past and present, and particularly, notions of memory and the past, and how that affects the contemporary, as well as an interest, just a kind of raw interest in politics. And I was very, very lucky. I worked on the great 1997 general election campaign in Millbank for Peter Mandelson, and I was a strong supporter of Tony Blair and the New Labour years. And when I was doing my doctorate, I worked as a special advisor a couple of days a week for David Sainsbury when he was the science minister. So I always kept this connection between politics and history. And I then had some happy years working at Queen Mary, University of London, lecturing there and making some television programs and writing books and doing the kind of sort of, that crossover, that public history space. But then there's always a sense of, wanting to give it a go yourself. And so I tried to be selected for a number of seats, and I was, very, very lucky enough to be selected and then elected as Member of Parliament for Stoke-on-Trent.
What are the plans for the future? What programs are you developing now for the V&A?
In the short term, a fantastic exhibition next year on Iran, epic Iran, telling the story of the 1,000 years of remarkable civilization through material culture. Then a big family exhibition on Alice in Wonderland next year. We've got an exhibition on bags coming out this autumn. But at a broader level, our big strategic objective over the next year is to build a new museum in Stratford in East London, V&A East, and a new collections and research centre in Stratford on the Olympic Park. So taking, everyone says, where have you hidden all the other stuff? Well, we're going to show you where it all is. So you will be able to wander the reserved collections of the V&A, see all those items that are not on display in the galleries, whilst also building a new museum as part of the East Bank development alongside Sadler's Wells, the BBC, London College of Fashion, to create this really new dynamic centre in the fastest growing, youngest, most diverse part of the UK, which is really exciting.
Yes, and the message to all the people on this really fascinating conversation, and thank you again for that, has to be come and then come again to the V&A. No?
Come again, and then best of all, become a member.
Yeah.
So if you're able to support the museum over the longer term, and that gives you free entry to exhibitions and the members room, and crucially the shop, discounts there. These are the times when actually, retaining support and growing support for these cultural institutions, which I'm not allowed to be political anymore, but we see growing attacks on institutions and sort of partisanship, and actually having a strong and vibrant civil society of which museums are a part, seems to be an important part of Britain and our democratic liberal traditions.
Well, Dr. Tristram Hunt, Director of the V&A, thank you very much on behalf of the Mishcon Academy for giving us an hour of your time, and thank you, those of you who have been listening, for listening.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
The Mishcon Academy Digital Sessions. To access advice for businesses that is regularly updated, please visit mishcon.com.